Hello, I'm Luna, and this is our last of this kind of clump of series of the Intro to Yoga classes. And today this class is going to be about forward folding. And forward folds are just so great to create space in your back body. It tends to get into the stretching into the hamstrings, which can get really tight. The whole chain of your back body can get really tight when we sit a lot, like in desks and cars and couches and all that stuff. And when all the back body gets tight, it's literally pulling, and you end up getting kind of all hunched and crunched in and condensed into something smaller. So in this practice, it's about creating space, elongating the spine, stretching the chain of your back body. And forward folds they're very cooling and calming on the nervous system. They can help with if you're feeling kind of depressed or anxious or anything like that. It's a nice calming practice in general. And it also helps, a lot of the forward folds helps with the circulatory system. A lot of the folds will be kind of like halfway upside down. So that also is really beneficial for the body. And I'll be curious to see how you guys are feeling throughout the practice in forward folds, how they do make you feel exploring that. So I would recommend 2 blocks, especially if you have tighter hamstrings. Blocks are going to be like your best friend. If you don't have blocks, no worries. We can figure it out, but blocks would be fantastic to have nearby. And then today we're going to get started just lying on our backs. And then when you lie onto your back, bend your knees, bring the soles of your feet to the floor, move your feet a little wider than hip distance apart, and allow your knees to touch. So this is just our nice constructive rest position. It's a great pose to already create some space in your low back and allow the spine to move towards a more neutral place. Your hands can be on your front body, on your torso, or your hands can be on either side of you, palms facing up. That's fine too. But let's close the eyes and just give yourself this first moment to do nothing at all. And just allow the focus, the awareness to naturally shift inward onto yourself. Also, what's nice about forward folds, we're literally folding into ourselves. It brings up this kind of introspection. It helps you to connect to yourself. So allow that to really be the theme of the practice, being curious of your own body, how these poses make your body feel. No judgment, no need to be hard on yourself for, having tight hamstrings or whatever is going on with you. But do become a little bit more aware of what's going on and how your body feels and how it feels as we move it around. Not only how you're feeling, but also mentally what you're thinking. Notice where the mind wanders. Can you bring it back to the present moment, to yourself? And that's really where the breath comes in. So connect to your breath right now and gradually begin to deepen it a little bit more and a little bit more. The breath is really going to help us find more space in our forward folds as well. So the inhales, they bring this sense of lengthening the spine, of creating space really in all directions. And then the exhales allow this sense of softening the tension that we're holding on to physically, of allowing ourselves to move deeper into each shape, of creating space that way, of softening. So continue inhaling a little bit deeper and exhaling a little bit more fully. More like that, inhaling deeply and exhaling fully. And then continue breathing in and out of your nose and find a little restriction across the back of your throat. This is called our Ujjayi breath, our ocean sounding breath. And that the breath is really what's going to help you harness the mind to the body. So think of the breath as like your form of meditation, which it truly is. And again, it's about that introspection, the keeping the focus inward onto yourself. And the breath is also going to tap into the parasympathetic nervous system. So we get to be in the mode of rest and digest, which is great for the forward fold, this idea of softening into the folds, versus the mode of fight or flight like we can be in our working environment, in our external worlds. So really try to stay connected to the breath throughout the practice. Okay, so keeping the breath, go ahead and hug your knees into your chest. A little rock from side to side. So this is already a forward fold, right? So forward folds, we're moving the legs towards the chest or the chest towards the legs, either way. We're folding forward in space. And this is a great pose to release your low back, Apanasana. Just gently hugging the knees into the chest is a great one, even if you're just, coming home after a long day. Just when you get in your bed, maybe you do a gentle little hugging of your knees into your chest, a little rocking from side to side to release your low back. That's great. And then go ahead and reach your heels up towards the ceiling. And your legs do not have to be straight, but they're going in that direction. And then reach your fingertips towards your shins. And you don't necessarily have to be touching the shins. You could just be reaching, or maybe you are touching. That's fine too. Flex through your feet. So you are extending through your heels, even if your knees are bent, that's fine. And then we're just trying to keep the spine long here. So roll the shoulders down your back, keep your chest open. We're just in a bit of a forward fold on our back here. And notice how the floor is literally encouraging your spine to stay long. So it's harder to round our spine here. Try to plug your shoulder blades down onto the floor so the back body stays long as you reach your fingertips towards your shins and move your legs towards straight. We're here for another breath or so, and we're going to come back to this pose later, just in a different way. The feet will be on the ground. But try to ingrain this in your body. So the lengthening of the spine, the chest open, your fingertips towards your shins, your legs towards straight, and then hug your knees back into your chest. And then roll yourself up into a seat. You could roll to one side and lift yourself on up. You could roll forward. And then go ahead and swivel your legs back behind you. Let's find tabletop position, just to find a little bit of movement in the spine. So in tabletop, you want to have your shoulders stacking right over your wrists and your knees hip distance apart. The fingers are spread wide. We're rooting the palms down. Just a little bit of movement. Inhale. Pull your chest forward and up, the tailbone up. And then exhale, tailbone to the floor, chin to your chest. Dome your back body to the ceiling. 2 more. Inhale, pull the chest forward and up, the tailbone lifts up. And then exhale, chin to your chest, tailbone to the floor. 1 more. Inhale, opening. Exhale, rounding. All right, from here, keep the knees hip distance, bring your feet together, and then rest your hips onto your heels for extended child's pose. Walk your hands forward a little bit more. So we want to have one long line of energy from your fingertips to your hips. The hips are moving in the direction of the heels. They don't have to touch, but they are going in that direction. So that'll help you lengthen your low back more. This is another kind of gentle forward fold here. So similar to Apanasana when we were hugging our knees into the chest, right? But now we're using the floor as leverage to hug the knees in versus our arms. And then we're encouraging the lengthening of the spine happening by reaching the fingertips forward in space. You're not only reaching your fingers forward, but you're also pressing your palms down in order to push your hips back onto your heels. Another breath here. This is a really lovely pose to release into your low back if you're sitting a lot throughout the day or even standing a lot. Stagnant weight usually hangs out in the low back. So this is a nice release for the low back, child's pose. Okay, keep your arms super straight and strong. Inhale, lift on up onto all fours. Kind of similar to child's pose. Think of that, the extension of your arms in your low back. As you exhale, tuck your toes and lift your hips up and back for down dog. So the hands are about shoulder distance. Spread your fingers wide. Press through your whole palm, especially your inner palm. And then melt your chest to your legs. So bend your knees a lot. Maybe even your ribs are resting onto your thighs because you're bending your knees so much. You're lifting onto your heels. So think of this almost like a child's pose, but in a different way. you're pushing your hips up and back, right? You're reaching through your fingertips, you're pushing your hips up and back, you're melting your like chest towards your legs, you're bending your knees a lot. So we're really tractioning, lengthening the low back. And then begin to move your legs towards straight, the heels towards the floor, but try to keep the lengthening of your spine. So it's less about your heels touching the floor and your legs being straight. And it's more about the hips lifting up and back and the melting of your chest towards your legs as you lift your hips up and back. And then the secondary is the heels moving towards the floor and the legs moving towards straight. And that just takes a lot of time, right? Especially if you have tight hamstrings. No rest. You're just slowly, as you come back into down dog and all the work we do in forward folds and yoga in general, you're slowly moving in the direction of straight legs, heels towards the floor, but take your time with it. Okay, little warm up. Inhale, reach your right leg up and back. Exhale, step your right foot where the right thumb is. Tap your left knee down. Hips sink low towards the floor. And then I'd recommend hands on blocks right now, at any height at all. Middle, lowest, highest. Hips are sinking low. Inhale, open your chest forward and up, kind of like a little cow spine. And then exhale, we're going to move both of the legs towards straight and fold over the right leg. So again, hands could be on blocks, or if you don't have blocks, finger pads could be on the floor. That's fine too. But we are trying to move the right leg towards straight until you get a bit of a hamstring and calf stretch. Okay, 2 more of those dynamically. Inhale, bend both of your knees. Hips sink low, chest opens. Exhale, move both of your legs towards straight and fold over your right leg. One more. Inhale, bends, hips sink low, chest opens. And then exhale, move both of your legs towards straight, fold forward. Let's hang out here for a couple of breaths. Keep your left heel lifted off of the floor. Something that's important in forward folds is the alignment of your hips. So we want to, usually the front leg, in this case, the right leg, the right hip is going to wrap forward, kind of following along. So feel an energetic wrapping of your outer right hip towards the back of the room. You can even use your right hand to your right hip and manually push your outer right hip to the back of the room. And that'll help you lengthen the low right side of your waist, which is lovely. That's what we're really trying to get at, right? In forward folds, lengthening the back body, the low back, the side waist, as you fold over your right leg. And then every inhale, can you encourage the spine to get a little longer? It's a tiny little micro movement, but it's a big key. And then with every exhale, can you just soften a little bit more your forehead in the direction of your shin? Inhale, wrap the outer right hip back, lengthen your spine a little bit more. It's a tiny micro movement. And then exhale, try to fold a little bit deeper. Great. Inhale, bend the right knee. Move your blocks to the side. And then exhale, downward facing dog. And then stay for a long inhale, lifting your hips up and back. And a long exhale, allow your heels to move towards the floor, your legs to move towards straight. And then inhale, lift your left leg up and back. Exhale, step your left foot where your left thumb is, tap the right knee down, and just make sure your left knee is truly right above your left ankle, so the knee doesn't actually pass the ankle. And then bring hands on blocks if you've got them. Otherwise, finger pads is fine. Just so the blocks give us a little bit more space, which is quite nice. And then left knee over the left ankle, hips sinking low. Inhale, open your chest. Back toes are tucked under, so you can exhale, move both of your legs towards straight. And any height of block is cool, right? Maybe walk your hands back a little bit and move your hands a little higher on blocks, so you can really access the stretch of your back body. 2 more. Inhale, bend both of the knees, hips sink low, chest opens. We're just warming up the body here. Exhale, move both of your legs towards straight. Fold over your left leg. Again, inhale, bends, hips sink low, chest opens. Exhale, moving both of the legs towards straight and forward folding. All right, and then we're going to hang out here. Inhale, just lengthen your spine. Maybe bring your left hand to your left hip and wrap it back. Maybe you don't, but feel the energetic wrapping of your outer left hip back, the right hip forward, just a little. But it's important to keep the hips in alignment to lengthen the low side waist evenly. And then exhale, just fold over your left leg. And then be here for a couple of breaths. So I call this a modified pyramid pose. The right heel is lifted. We've got this long stance happening. We'll come into classic pyramid pose, which is a little bit more intense later. But now we're just slowly kind of waking up the body, warming up the body. So again, every inhale, can you wrap the left hip back a little bit more and lengthen your spine? The more length you have in the spine, the deeper stretch you're truly going to get. And every exhale, see if you can fold a little bit deeper. One more inhale and a long exhale. Cool. Inhale, bend the left knee. Move your blocks to the side if you've got them. Root your palms to the floor. Exhale, downward facing dog. Hang in down dog for a couple of breaths. So as we come back into down dog, we want to begin to really wake up the muscles. Feel the forearms rebound away from the floor. So like the under forearm area, the forearm muscles lift away from the floor. Also feel the outer upper arms hugging in as your shoulder blades push into your chest. And then begin to activate your legs a little bit more. Can you maybe lift your kneecaps up and lift your quads up? So feel your quads actually helping your hips lift up and back. So we're not only relying on our hands and our arms in down dog, we're also relying on the legs to lift the hips up and back, to drive the heels towards the floor, to move the body like back in space. Think about like if someone had their hands like on either one of your hips and pulling your hips up and back. Try to feel that yourself. And then inhale, gaze forward, and exhale, walk, 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 walk your feet forward, and have your feet hip distance apart at the top of your mat. Bend your knees a lot and just hang upside down. Really hang. Bend the knees a lot, a lot, a lot. So just like down dog, right? The more you bend your knees, the more length you can find in your spine right now. So really get there. Maybe even your ribs are resting onto your thighs. Maybe not. That's fine too. A little bit more weight towards your toes and really feeling your head hang. A couple of breaths here. Maybe you clasp opposite elbows if that feels all right to you. That just adds a little bit more weight into the fold. So maybe you kind of allow the spine to stretch a little bit deeper towards the floor. You could do a gentle kind of sway from side to side. So you're just kind of exploring the release in your low back, to the mid back, to the upper back, to the neck. And then you can cross opposite forearm in front and do the same little sway if you're doing that. You could also do a little dangle with your head, yes and no. So we're trying to really just allow gravity to do the work now in your forward fold. So the gravity is pulling the spine longer, the head towards the floor, right? We're almost always like upright. So all the weight is moving down. So now this is the opposite. All the weight is like pulling up, technically up towards your head, right? Towards the crown of your head, but ultimately towards the floor. Release your hands towards the floor, and let's go ahead and grab hold of your blocks. If you don't have blocks, finger pads are fine, like we did earlier. And then bring your hands either on finger pads or blocks right underneath your shoulder heads. So that was Uttanasana, our forward fold. This is our Ardha Uttanasana. Your hands are on blocks or finger pads on the floor, but your shoulder heads are stacking right above your wrists. Toes are a little bit in, heels are a little bit out, and then bend the knees as much as you need to actually lengthen your spine. So notice, when you straighten your legs, your spine wants to round, right? Bend the knees a good amount, and then feel your tailbone reach back in space. The frontal hip bones are moving forward in space. So we're not rounding the low back, we're lengthening the low back. And then from the length of the low back, can you pull your chest forward and up a little bit more and shrug your shoulders down your back? So remember what we were doing on our backs, right? We're moving the legs towards straight. We're lengthening the spine. Feel as if your spine was on the floor right now. So you can't round. You have to lengthen. This is Ardha Uttanasana, your half forward fold, which is encouraging you to lengthen your spine throughout the practice, which is just really, really great to continue to come back to it throughout the practice. As you warm up your hamstrings and your calves, you'll dive a little bit deeper. Okay, fold over your legs, move your blocks to the side. Now let's come without the blocks. Inhale, bend the knees, bring your hands onto your shins and lengthen your spine. So, there's not too much weight on your shins. You're really just using your hands to your shins to encourage to lengthen your spine more. So you're pushing down to reach your chest forward, and then exhale, fold over your legs and keep that little bend. It's always going to help you find more space. Okay, inhale, reach your arms all the way on up. Palms touch, gazes up above your head, and then exhale, palms together in front of the heart. We're going to come into like a modified sun salutation to warm up the body a bit more. So inhale, reach your arms up to the ceiling. Exhale, when you fold forward, bend your knees and hinge at your hips. We're not rounding the spine forward. You're bending your knees, reaching your arms wide, wide, wide. It's almost like a swan dive, forward folding. And then inhale, come up halfway. Hands on your shins. Bend your knees so you can truly lengthen your spine. And then exhale, hands to the floor, step back, plank pose. Inhale and plank pose, top of a push-up. Lean forward, tap your knees down. So it's a modified plank pose. And then exhale, shift forward, bend your elbows, shift forward, bend your elbows right behind you as you slowly lower yourself down. Uncurl your toes. Inhale is a cobra. Ground down through all 10 toes. Engage your legs. Pull your chest forward and up, just a little back bend of your upper back. And then exhale, downward facing dog. And then hang out in down dog for a couple of long breaths, feeling the hips lift up and back, melting the chest towards the legs, moving the heels towards the floor. They do not have to touch the floor, but again, we're working in that direction, right, as we warm up more and more. 2 more. Inhale, gaze forward. Exhale, step, step, step forward. Feet could be hip distance or together. Either way is fine. But inhale, come up halfway. Fingertips on your shins. Bend your knees. Lengthen. Exhale, fold over your legs. Inhale, reach your arms all the way up. Here you're hinging up, right? You're not rounding up. You're hinging up from the strength of your legs and your core lift up. Exhale, palms together in front of the heart. 2 more of those. Inhale, arms lifting tall. Exhale, fold forward. Bend the knees as you fold forward. Inhale, come up halfway. Bend the knees as you lengthen your spine. Exhale, root your palms, step back, plank pose. Inhale, and plank pose, lean forward, tap your knees down, the hips are low. Exhale, bend the elbows straight back as you lower down. Inhale, cobra, engage your legs, open your chest. And then exhale, downward facing dog, lifting the hips up and back. Couple of long breaths in downward facing dog. Inhales, expand. Exhales, soften. So if you live in a pretty stiff body, you'll probably have to bend the knees a little bit more, right? And then also think about moving your sitting bones up towards the ceiling, flaring your butt up. That's going to help you lengthen your spine. So less rounding of your low back. We're trying to lengthen the low back. So the hips, again, are pulling straight up and back. Okay, inhale, gaze forward. Exhale, step, 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 step forward. Come up halfway as you inhale. It's all about the lengthening of the spine, right? And then exhale, fold back over your legs. Again, the lengthening is happening. Inhale, reach your arms all the way on up. Palms touch, gazes up. And exhale, palms together in front of the heart. Last round. Inhale, arms lifting. Exhale, forward folding. Bend the knees so you can hinge at your hips as you fold forward. Inhale, come up halfway. Exhale, step back, plank pose. Inhale and plank, lean forward, tap your knees down, modified plank. Exhale, modified chaturanga. Hug the elbows back as you lower down, uncurl your toes. Inhale, cobra. Exhale, downward facing dog. 3 long breaths in downward facing dog. So it's kind of this push and pull, right? We're bending the knees a little bit and lifting the hips up and back, but then we're also moving the legs towards straight. Bending the knees a little bit, lifting the hips up and back, but also moving the legs towards straight. Okay, inhale, gaze forward. Exhale, step, 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 step forward. Inhale, come up halfway. Exhale, fold forward. Inhale, arms lift all the way up to standing. And then exhale, palms together in front of the heart. And then bring your hands to your hips. And then just step your left foot way open to the left and pivot all 10 toes to the left. And have your toes just a little bit in and your heels just a little bit out. You want your feet in alignment with one another. And then once you find that, with your hands on your hips, again, you could bend the knees a little if you have tight hamstrings. That's actually a good idea. It'll help you lengthen your spine, less rounding. Hug the elbows towards one another. Inhale, lengthen your spine. Try to keep this length. As you exhale, hinge at your hips. Hinge, 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 hinge. And then fold forward. Hands could be on blocks. You could grab blocks or hands on the floor. And then inhale, lengthen your spine again. So think that Ardha Uttanasana, the half forward fold. Bend your knees as much as you need to truly lengthen your spine. And then exhale, fold back over your legs. And then we're hanging out here in our wide leg forward fold. stretching into the inseam of the legs, but also the back body of the hamstrings and the calves. And your hands can be doing anything. They could be on the ground. They could be to the outer ankles or outer shins. That's fine too. But do try to inhale, lengthen the spine more and more and more. And exhale, soften into your forward fold more and more and more. You're moving your legs towards straight. And in these forward folds, you want a little bit more weight towards your toes versus your heels. Just trust yourself that you won't fall over. Maybe you will, and that's fine too. But the weight towards your toes in forward folds helps you find a deeper stretch in your back body. Okay, inhale, come on up halfway, bend your knees, come onto your finger pads underneath your shoulder heads or blocks. Exhale, hands to your hips, elbows to the ceiling. Feel the strength of your legs in your core. Inhale, hinge yourself back up to standing like we started. And then exhale, step your feet back together. And then step forward to the front of your mat. Have your blocks near your feet. Have your feet hip distance apart. One last standing pose, then we'll wind down. Feet are hip distance with your hands on your hips. Let's step your left foot back. Yeah, left foot. So pyramid pose, it's a very deep hamstring and calf stretch. Lovely, but can be intense. So you want your left foot at an angle forward towards the front left corner of your mat. That'll just help you open the hips and get deeper into the hamstring. Find more support with the back leg. And the right toes are straight forward in space. And then with your hands on your hips, remember the hips like to get skewed here. So we want to try to move the hips in alignment with one another. So you're wrapping your outer left hip forward, the outer right hip back in space. So I like to think of it like my hips are like headlights of a car. They're on the same plane, straight forward in space. They're not like at this like weird angle, straight forward, like the road is straight forward in space. And then continue pulling the right hip back. Hug your elbows towards one another. Inhale, lengthen your spine. There might be a little bend of the right knee, especially if you have tighter hamstrings. Exhale, slow motion, hinge at your hips and fold over your right leg. And then I would recommend hands on blocks underneath your shoulder heads at any height at all. Maybe finger pads on the floor if you don't have blocks. But again, so the blocks are really going to help us like truly move the right leg towards straight, right? To actually like really deeply get into the back chain of your right body. Hands on any height of blocks, and maybe after a couple of breaths, you actually move the blocks a little lower, the lower height or whatnot, whatever. Feel it out for you. It doesn't matter how low you're getting. You're just trying to access the stretch in your own body. It does not matter what it looks like. There's a little micro bend of the right knee, so you don't want to hyperextend, which means locking your knee like straighter than straight, past straight. So especially for my super bendy bodies, that tends to happen. Be mindful of that. We don't want to like hang out on that joint. That's just not going to be so healthy for the joint. So there's a micro bend happening, even though you are moving your right leg towards straight, right? And then for my stiff bodies, again, there could be a little bend of the knee, but you are moving your leg towards straight. And then remember what we did in our modified pyramid pose earlier. Notice how the right hip wants to wrap to the right wall and forward. Can you energetically or maybe physically with your right hand wrap your outer right hip to the back of the room so it stays in alignment with your left hip as you fold over your right leg. Every inhale lengthens. Your back leg is still really strong. It's a nice stabilizer for your pelvis. Every exhale folds a little bit deeper. Great. Inhale, come up halfway, bend the right knee, and then exhale, just step your left foot forward so your feet are hip distance apart and fold over your legs in a gentle forward fold just to clear that out. Again, maybe you clasp opposite elbows, maybe sway from side to side, just breathing into the stretch of your back body. Okay, inhale, come up halfway. Remember the bending of the knees, the lengthening of the spine, and then exhale, fold forward. Inhale, reach your arms all the way on up, palms touch, gazes up, and exhale, palms together in front of the heart, and then bring your hands to your hips. Step your right foot back, about a leg's distance apart, so not too short, but not too long. Enough that you can keep your outer right foot grounded and wrap your hips in alignment with one another. So pull your left hip back and your right hip forward in space. And then hug the elbows towards one another. Inhale, lengthen your spine. Exhale, you're hinging at your hips, so you're pulling the pelvis forward. You're pouring it forward in space. And then bringing your hands onto any height of blocks at all, maybe finger pads on the floor. And then we're here for a moment, wrapping the outer left hip back, lengthening the spine and forward folding. Think about grounding through the inner left foot, especially like the left big toe ball mound, as you wrap your outer left hip to the back of the room and fold over your left leg. So moving your legs really straight and strong, but not hyperextending the left leg, the left knee, I should say. And breathing into the stretch of the back left body. Every inhale encourages a little bit more length. Every exhale encourages a little bit of a deeper forward fold. Inhale, come back up halfway. Bend the left knee. Exhale, step your right foot forward. Feet are hip distance. Bend the knees at least a little, maybe a lot, and hook the opposite forearm in front, whatever feels a bit odd in your body. And just hang out here for a moment. Maybe you sway from side to side. And notice, maybe you feel like you've got more open hamstrings and calves here. So maybe you can move your legs a little bit straighter in your forward fold than how we were holding our bodies earlier in our first forward fold like this, right? All right, release your hands. Inhale, come up halfway. Ardha Uttanasana, half forward fold, opening your chest. Exhale, fold forward. And then inhale, bend your knees and reach your arms tall in chair pose. Bit of a forward fold. We've got the legs towards the chest a little bit here. The hips are reaching back and down. The arms are reaching up. So we're lengthening the spine. One more inhale. On the next exhale, bend your knees so much that you lower your hips all the way to the floor. You could use your hands for support. And then let's reach to the, let's bring the soles of the feet together and the knees wide. So coming into a bit of a hip stretch. Soles of feet together, knees wide. You're moving your heels towards your hips. So in seated forward folds, if you notice your spine is rounding, that just means you have pretty tight hamstrings and hips, which is very normal. You can sit up onto your block or maybe a folded up blanket or a pillow or whatever you've got. So when you elevate your hips, you'll find more length in your spine. You've got more space in general in your hips, your hamstrings, your low back. So that's a great idea. Again, we want to try to lengthen the spine. The more length we have, the deeper stretch we'll be getting. So if sitting on a block is what's going to help you find more length in your spine, do that. That's a great idea. And any seated posture, really. Okay, so we're inhale, lengthening the spine. And maybe this is it, and you stay right here, and this is great. You could also slowly pull yourself into a gentle forward fold. We're stretching into the inner thighs and the outer hips. Your hands could be holding onto your feet or your ankles. Either way is fine. But can you really feel the lengthening of your spine? And then in seated forward folds, think of your sitting bones, the base of your pelvis, like those bony parts at your butt. Think about them as really the feet of the pose. That's what's going to help you ground. So you want to think about grounding your sitting bones down to the floor. So there's an energetic grounding down with your hips as you lengthen and fold forward. So you're not just like lifting your hips off of the floor and forward folding. You feel this dual action of pushing down and lengthening and forward folding. Okay, one more breath here. Baddha Konasana. Inhale, lift yourself back up. And then move your feet forward, but keep the soles of the feet together. Move your feet forward a good 3, 4, 5 inches. So this is called Tarasana. It's a little bit more of an outer hip stretch. It's a great stretch for your low back as well. You're going to inhale, lengthen your spine, and then exhale, fold forward. And you could bring hands on the floor. You could also bring a block into play. Maybe a block rests underneath your head. So this can be a little bit more of a gentle forward fold, a restorative forward fold. So you're not super active. You could be active and like crawl your hands forward and pull your spine longer, but you could also be more passive and just soften into this. But even still, you're feeling the hips ground, and every inhale encourages a little bit more length in the spine, and every exhale a little bit more of a softening into your forward fold. Okay, inhale, lift yourself back up. Reach your legs forward in space. Flex through your feet. Your feet can be together or hip distance apart. And then this is our nice Paschimottanasana, nice forward fold. Remember, though, in the beginning of the practice, when we were laying on our backs and the legs were straight up towards the ceiling. So feel that right now. Feel as if your back was against the floor, right? So notice how the spine wants to round, just the tendency, right? That pulling of the whole back body chain, because we sit a lot. So can you instead kind of roll towards the frontal sit bones a little bit, lift up through the crown of your head, and you can even use your hands to push down, to roll the shoulders down the back, to push the shoulder blades into the chest, and to lift up. So already here might be a lot for you, and that's cool. That's great. We're stretching the back body. Diving deeper, we'll inhale, lift the arms up to the ceiling, and then exhale, fold forward. We're hinging at the hips. We're not rounding forward. We're hinging, just like our forward fold when we were flowing and moving. And then once you notice your spine is rounding, that's your edge, you stay where you can keep the spine long. You could have a strap around your feet. That's totally an option, but you can also have your hands on your shins or your ankles or your feet or whatever. Again, it's not about where your hand placement is. It's about the lengthening of your spine. So again, if bending the knees a little bit is going to help you lengthen your spine, do that. But keep the flexion of your feet so you're continuing to stretch into the calves and the Achilles, the back of the ankles. And then we're here for a couple more long breaths. Every inhale, maybe you can lengthen your spine a little bit more. Every exhale, maybe you can fold a little bit deeper over your legs. Breathing into the stretch. So, it takes time, right? You're not just going to immediately touch your forehead to your shins. It takes a lot of time to open your back body. So practicing patience, especially with forward folds, just like anything, the more you practice, the more you show up, the more you'll see things are changing and evolving. One more breath here in your forward fold. Maybe you can dive a little bit deeper. And then inhale, lift yourself on up. And then exhale, we're going to roll onto our backs. Once you roll onto your back, just release your legs long in front of you. Allow the feet to splay open naturally. Have your arms on either side of you with your palms facing up. This is Shavasana, our final resting pose. If it feels nice, you could inhale deeply into your nose, filling up. And then a big exhale, all the air out. No more breath control, no more muscle control, just softening. And notice how you feel from all the forward folds. So again, maybe you're feeling more cooling and calming in the nervous system. Maybe you feel like you've got a little bit more space in your back body. Just notice. Maybe you feel a little bit more aware, a little bit more in tune with yourself, that introspection. And then let yourself be here for at least a couple more minutes. This is when you get to take in all the good you've just done in your practice. Giving yourself a moment to do nothing at all. Thank you for practicing with me today. I'll see you soon. Namaste.